The bridge of the TSS Indomitable thrummed with quiet efficiency as Admiral Sarah Chun reviewed the tactical display. The massive Dreadnought's command center was a study in controlled power. Banks of holographic displays showing the complete layout of the Zelkari detention facility and every life sign within it. "Status report," Chun commanded, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had spent 30 years climbing through the ranks of Terra's most elite naval forces. "All ships in position." "Admiral," reported Commander Torres from the tactical station. "Target is completely surrounded. No escape routes available. We're reading 147 Zelkari life signs and 1 human, confirmed as Ambassador Mitchell." Chun nodded grimly. At 55, she was one of the youngest admirals in Terran history, having earned her rank through a series of increasingly difficult assignments that had tested both her strategic mind and her ability to make hard decisions under pressure. This mission was personal for reasons that went beyond military protocol. "Communications, patch me through to the facility. I want to speak with whoever's in charge." Lieutenant Park's fingers danced across his console. "Channel open, Admiral." "Zelkari facility, this is Admiral Sarah Chun of the Terran Fifth Fleet. You are holding Ambassador Jonathan Mitchell in violation of galactic diplomatic law. You have exactly 10 minutes to release him and prepare for full surrender of your installation." The response came quickly, tinged with desperation. "Admiral Chun, this is Commander Thexfer. We were not aware of the Ambassador's importance. Perhaps we can reach some accommodation." Chun's laugh was cold and without humor. "Accommodation? Commander, you made a critical error when you decided to capture a Terran diplomat. But your real mistake was not understanding who you captured." In the detention facility, Thexfer looked questioningly at his prisoner. Mitchell had been listening to the exchange with growing amusement, and now he was openly smiling. "Is there something you'd like to share, human?" Thexfer asked nervously. "Admiral Chun," Mitchell said loud enough for the communication system to pick up his voice. "Sarah, I should have expected they'd send you." "Hello, Dad," came the Admiral's voice over the speakers, and Thexfer felt his 4 hearts skip a beat simultaneously. "Are you injured?" "I'm fine, sweetheart," Mitchell replied. "Though I think Commander Thexfer here is beginning to understand the scope of his predicament." The Zelkari commander's mandibles were clicking so rapidly they sounded like a machine gun. "Admiral? Admiral Chen is your offspring?" "My daughter," Mitchell confirmed. "And not just any daughter. Sarah graduated top of her class from the Terran Naval Academy. Youngest person ever to command a dreadnought, and she's never lost an engagement. The hegemony calls her the Iron Admiral for good reason." Through the communication system, Admiral Chun's voice carried deadly calm. "Commander Thexfer, let me explain your situation in terms you can understand. You have captured my father, the man who taught me strategy, who read me bedtime stories about famous naval battles, who attended my graduation from the academy, the man I would move planets to protect." Thexfer was beginning to understand that his intelligence about human, military capabilities had been catastrophically inadequate. "Admiral, surely we can negotiate ... negotiate." Chun's voice rose slightly. "Commander, you're not in a position to negotiate anything." "Sensors, what's our tactical assessment?" Commander Torres' voice came through clearly. "Facility is built into a Class M asteroid approximately 2 kilometers in diameter. Multiple defensive installations, but their weapons are at least 50 years behind our current technology. Estimated time to neutralize all defenses, 4 minutes and 30 seconds. Weapon status? All batteries charged and ready, Admiral. Targeting solutions locked on all defensive positions. Marines are standing by for boarding action." In his cell, Ambassador Mitchell watched as Thexfer processed this information. The Zelkari's compound eyes were darting frantically between the prisoner and his communication device, clearly calculating odds that were becoming more hopeless by the second. "Commander," Mitchell said gently, "you should know something else about my daughter. She's also the most decorated officer in the Terran Marines. Before she transferred to the Navy, she spent 10 years in Special Forces. Close quarters combat, tactical assault, hostage rescue. She wrote half the textbook on small unit operations. Why are you telling me this? Dexver whispered. Because if you force her to come aboard this station to get me, she won't be coming alone. And Zelkari biology doesn't hold up well against human close combat techniques. Admiral Chun's voice returned to the speakers. Commander Torres, prep the boarding parties. Full tactical gear? I want Ambassador Mitchell extracted and this facility secured within the hour. Admiral, wait, Dexver said desperately. What are your terms? My terms? Chun's voice carried a note of surprise. Commander, I think you misunderstand the situation. This isn't a negotiation. This is me informing you of what's about to happen. You can either cooperate and live through it, or resist and become a cautionary tale. The external sensors showed the human fleet adjusting positions. The smaller ships were moving closer, and it was becoming clear that they weren't standard naval vessels. These were assault transports designed specifically for boarding actions against hostile installations. However, Admiral Chun continued, my father has always been better at diplomacy than I am. Dad, what do you recommend? Mitchell considered for a moment. The commander here seems like a reasonable individual who made a mistake based on faulty intelligence. I'm willing to treat this as a learning experience rather than an act of war. Your terms? Chun asked. Immediate release, safe passage for myself and any other prisoners currently being held here, and a formal apology to be transmitted to the Galactic Council acknowledging violation of diplomatic immunity. In exchange, this facility remains operational and all personnel survive to learn from this experience. Dexver was nodding frantically before Mitchell finished speaking. Yes, acceptable terms. Completely acceptable. One more thing, Mitchell added. I want a full briefing on how you intercepted my shuttle. There are security implications that need to be addressed. Of course, Ambassador. Whatever you require. Admiral Chun's voice carried satisfaction. Very well. Commander Dexver, you have 30 minutes to process Ambassador Mitchell's release and prepare a complete intelligence briefing. A boarding party will arrive to escort him to safety and verify compliance with our terms. Understood, Admiral. We will comply fully. As the communication ended, Dexver immediately began entering commands to deactivate the cell's energy barrier. His movements were quick and nervous, motivated by the very clear understanding that his survival depended on complete cooperation. Ambassador, he said as the barrier flickered and died, please accept my deepest apologies. We were not aware of your connections or the response our actions would provoke. Mitchell stepped out of the cell, straightening his diplomatic uniform. Commander, may I offer you some advice? Please. Never assume you understand an opponent's true capabilities based on limited information. Humans have learned to be very good at misdirection. What you see in our diplomatic and commercial activities bears little resemblance to our military potential. Dexver nodded vigorously. We understand now, Ambassador. Our intelligence was clearly insufficient. More than insufficient, Mitchell said. Dangerously wrong. You see, the Terran government has a very specific policy regarding attacks on our diplomatic personnel. It's considered an attack on Terra herself. They began walking through the corridors toward the facility's docking bay, followed by nervous Zelkari guards who were clearly torn between their duty to escort the prisoner and their very reasonable fear of the fleet surrounding their home, the ships outside. Dexver asked hesitantly, they're truly representative of human military capabilities? The Fifth Fleet? They're our rapid response force for diplomatic emergencies? Compared to our main battle fleets, they're considered a light reconnaissance group. The Zelkari commander stopped walking entirely. Light reconnaissance? Commander, the ship my daughter is commanding masses approximately 8 million tons and carries enough firepower to crack a moon's crust. In human naval classification, the Indomitable is considered a medium cruiser. Medium cruiser? Dexver's voice was barely a whisper. Our actual dreadnoughts are considerably larger, Mitchell continued conversationally. But they're typically reserved for major fleet actions. This situation didn't warrant their deployment. By the time they reached the docking bay, Word had spread throughout the facility about the true nature of their prisoner and the forces arrayed against them. Zelkari personnel lined the corridors, watching in awed silence as the human diplomat walked calmly past. His bearing unchanged, despite his recent captivity, the first human shuttle arrived, precisely 30 minutes after Admiral Chun's ultimatum expired. It was smaller than the Zelkari had expected, but there was something ominous about its perfect silence and the way it seemed to absorb sensor readings rather than reflect them. The docking bay doors opened with a hiss of equalizing atmosphere, and 6 figures emerged from the shuttle. They moved with perfect synchronization, their powered armor making them appear larger. The Zelkari detention facility hummed with an eerie blue light that cast long shadows across the crystalline walls. Commander Thexver prowled through the corridors, his forearms gesticulating wildly as he spoke into his communication device. The insectoid alien's mandibles clicked with satisfaction as he reviewed the day's most significant capture. "High Command will be pleased," he chittered to his second-in-command, Lieutenant Krexelon. "We have taken a human diplomat. These soft creatures always break under pressure. This one will reveal all their military secrets." The human sat quietly in the center of the containment cell, hands folded peacefully in his lap. Ambassador Jonathan Mitchell appeared unremarkable to his captors. Average height, graying hair, wearing a simple black diplomatic uniform with minimal decoration. The only distinguishing feature was a small silver pin on his collar that the aliens had dismissed as mere ornamentation. Thexver studied the prisoner through the energy barrier. "Look at it, Krexelon. So calm, so composed. They always act brave at first. But humans are weak. Their bodies are soft, their minds fragile. This one will beg for mercy before the cycle ends." The ambassador had been captured during what appeared to be a routine diplomatic mission to the Outer Rim colonies. His shuttle had been intercepted by Zelkari raiders who initially planned simple piracy, but when they discovered they had taken a human diplomat, the potential for valuable intelligence became too tempting to ignore. "Sir," Krexelon's voice carried uncertainty, "perhaps we should contact the hegemony before proceeding. Humans have been unpredictable in past encounters." Thexver's laugh was a harsh buzzing sound. "Unpredictable? They are barely capable of interstellar flight. Their technology is primitive, their military laughable. What could they possibly do? We are light years from their nearest outpost." Inside the cell, Ambassador Mitchell finally spoke, his voice calm and measured. "Commander Thexver, I assume?" "I'm Ambassador Jonathan Mitchell of the Terran Diplomatic Corps. I believe there's been a misunderstanding." The Zelkari commander approached the energy barrier, all 4 of his compound eyes focusing on the human. "There is no misunderstanding, soft one. You are now a prisoner of the Zelkari Empire. You will provide us with information about human military installations, fleet movements, and defensive capabilities." "I'm afraid that's not possible," Mitchell replied politely. "As a diplomatic envoy, I'm protected under galactic law. Moreover, I don't possess the type of military information you're seeking." Thexver's mandibles clicked in amusement. "Galactic law? Here, I am the law. And humans always claim to know nothing before we ... Encourage them to remember." The facility around them was impressive by any standard. The Zelkari had built it into a hollowed-out asteroid, making it nearly undetectable to conventional sensors. Multiple layers of shielding protected it from both scanning and attack. Guard towers positioned throughout the complex were manned by heavily armed Zelkari soldiers, their energy weapons capable of cutting through most known materials. "Your species fascinates me," Thexver continued, beginning to pace around the cell's perimeter. "So weak, yet somehow you manage to establish a presence in this galaxy. Tell me, human, how does it feel to know your people will never find you here?" Ambassador Mitchell's expression remained unchanged. "They'll find me, Commander. They always do." "Impossible," Krexelon interjected. "We monitored all communications during the capture. No distress signal was sent. Your primitive technology cannot penetrate our location." "You're quite right about that," Mitchell agreed. My shuttle's communication systems were indeed inadequate for this situation. Something in the human's tone made Dexter pause. There was no fear, no desperation, only a quiet confidence that seemed entirely out of place for a captured prisoner. "What are you telling us, human?" "Nothing you wouldn't learn eventually," Mitchell replied. "Tell me, Commander, are you familiar with human military organization?" "Your military is irrelevant," Dexter snapped. "A handful of primitive ships scattered across space. What threat could they possibly pose to the Zalkari Empire?" Mitchell smiled for the first time since his capture, and something about that expression made both aliens take an involuntary step backward. "That's the thing about humans, Commander. We don't always advertise our capabilities. That little pin on my collar? It's not decoration." Dexter looked closer at the silver insignia, noticing for the first time that it wasn't merely ornamental. There was something almost technological about its design, with tiny geometric patterns that seemed to shift when viewed from different angles. "What is it?" Krexelon demanded. "A transponder," Mitchell said simply. "Military grade. Quantum entangled with our fleet's navigation systems. It's been broadcasting my exact location since the moment you captured me." The two Zalkari exchanged worried glances. "That's impossible," Dexter said, but his voice lacked conviction. "We would have detected any transmission, would you?" Mitchell asked. "Quantum entanglement doesn't transmit in any conventional sense. Information transfer is instantaneous across any distance, completely undetectable by traditional sensors. It's basic human technology." The confidence in the human's voice was beginning to unnerve his captors. Dexter had interrogated dozens of species over his career, and he'd never encountered a prisoner so utterly unafraid. Most beings showed at least some sign of stress, elevated breathing, nervous movements, chemical changes that their sensors could detect. This human displayed none of those reactions. "You're lying," Dexter declared, but his mandibles were clicking rapidly now, a sign of agitation that Krexelon recognized. "Am I?" Mitchell stood up slowly, his movements careful and deliberate. "Tell me, Commander, how long has it been since you captured me?" 6 hours? 7? 5 hours and 43 minutes, Krexelon answered automatically. "Plenty of time," Mitchell said with satisfaction. "Human naval doctrine calls for immediate response to diplomatic emergencies. When an ambassador's transponder indicates capture or distress, the nearest available fleet elements are dispatched for immediate rescue operations." Dexter's forearms began moving agitatedly. "Even if what you say is true, which it isn't, your nearest ships are days away at minimum. We have time to extract the information we need and relocate." "Days away?" Mitchell tilted his head thoughtfully. "You really don't understand human capabilities, do you?" "Commander, what do you know about our faster-than-light travel systems?" "Primitive jump drives," Dexter said dismissively. "Slower than most civilized species." "The ones we let you see, yes," Mitchell agreed. "Those are our commercial and diplomatic vessels. Completely different matter when it comes to military craft." Something was happening on the facility's monitoring systems. Lights began flashing amber throughout the complex, and a low warning tone echoed through the corridors. Dexter's communication device crackled to life. "Commander," came the voice of the sensor operator, "we're detecting unusual readings at the edge of our scanning range." "Possible gravitational anomalies?" Dexter grabbed the device. "Explain." "Sir, there appear to be distortions in space-time. Multiple signatures moving at impossible speeds. They're heading directly for our position." The Zalkari commander looked at his prisoner with new wariness. Mitchell was still standing calmly in the center of his cell, but there was something different about his demeanor now. He looked like someone waiting for an appointment he was certain would be kept. "How?" Dexter whispered. "Alcubierre drives," Mitchell said simply. "We've been working on the mathematics for centuries. Most species try to move through space faster. We learn to compress space itself, move it around us instead. Much more efficient." The warning systems were becoming more insistent now. Multiple contacts were appearing on sensors, moving at velocities that defied the Zalkari's understanding of physics. Each contact was massive, far larger than any human vessel in their intelligence databases. "This is impossible," Krexelon said, his voice rising in pitch. "Human ships are small, limited. We've seen them." "You've seen what we wanted you to see," Mitchell replied. "Humanity learned long ago that being underestimated is often an advantage. Why reveal your true strength when your enemies will handicap themselves with their own assumptions?" The first visual contact came through the facility's external cameras. What appeared on the screens made both Zalkari officers step backward in shock. The approaching vessels were enormous, each one easily 10 times the size of the largest Zalkari warship. Their design was unlike anything in known databases. Sleek, angular, with energy signatures that made the facility's sensors struggle to maintain lock. "Dreadnoughts," Mitchell said proudly. "The Terran Fifth Fleet's heavy battle group. Each one carries enough firepower to sterilize a small moon." Vexvera's communication device was now screaming with incoming reports from across the facility. The approaching human ships were not just large, they were accompanied by smaller craft that were moving in perfect formation, executing maneuvers that demonstrated technological superiority far beyond anything the Zalkari had imagined possible. "Sir," came another panicked voice through the communicator, "we're being scanned. Their sensors are penetrating our shielding like it doesn't exist. They know exactly where we are, exactly how many of us are here." Mitchell checked his chronom. Morrison led his team through the canyon system under cover of darkness, moving toward the Vorthan base camp with the silent precision of apex predators. The surviving members of his group had been transformed over the past 18 hours from terrified civilians into something far more dangerous, humans with nothing left to lose and the knowledge that their enemies could be killed. The base camp was exactly where Kim's intelligence analysis had predicted, positioned on high ground overlooking the main canyon approaches, with clear fields of fire and multiple escape routes. It was a textbook defensive position, which also made it predictable. Morrison had assaulted dozens of similar installations during his years as a SEAL, and he knew exactly how to exploit the overconfidence that came with superior firepower. "Remember, we have one objective," Morrison whispered to his companions as they took position around the camp perimeter. "Capture their communications array and call for help. Everything else is secondary to getting a distress signal to the nearest human outpost." Captain Santos checked the improvised explosive device Rodriguez had built from salvaged Vorthan power cells. "This should take out their main sensor array. Once it goes off, we'll have maybe 10 minutes before they re-establish communications with their ship." Williams nodded from his position overlooking the camp's main entrance. "I count 8 guards on patrol routes, plus whatever's inside the command shelter. The young hunters are getting nervous. They're bunching up instead of maintaining proper spacing." Morrison studied the layout through captured Vorthan optics. The base camp consisted of 3 main structures: a command post housing the communications equipment, a weapons cache containing the energy spears and ceremonial armor, and a medical facility where wounded hunters could be treated. Commander Zethrak's command shuttle was parked nearby. "Its engines cold but ready for rapid departure? What?" Caught Morrison's attention was something the aliens probably hadn't considered: a fuel dump containing the exotic matter that powered their vehicles and equipment. If Rodriguez could reach those storage tanks with the right kind of charge, the resulting explosion would level half the camp and provide an excellent distraction. "Sarah, what's the command structure looking like?" Morrison asked through their improvised communication system. Kim was monitoring Vorthan transmissions from a concealed position. "Zethrak is furious about the hunter casualties, but he's maintaining the exercise. The young Vorthans are demanding permission to use military weapons instead of ceremonial equipment. He's refusing because it would violate their honor codes." Morrison smiled grimly. Even faced with organized resistance, the aliens were allowing tradition to override tactical necessity. It was the kind of institutional blindness that got armies. Defeated by supposedly inferior opponents, the attack began at exactly midnight. Local time, Rodriguez's explosive device detonated against the main sensor array. creating a brilliant flash that temporarily blinded the Vorthan guards. Simultaneously, Williams opened fire on the patrol routes using a captured energy spear, forcing the aliens to take cover while Morrison and Kim moved toward the command post. The young Vorthan hunters responded exactly as their training dictated, with individual acts of courage, rather than coordinated defensive action. They charged toward the explosions and gunfire, seeking glorious combat against their human prey. It was magnificent and completely suicidal against opponents who understood modern military tactics. Morrison reached their command post while the Vorthans were still reacting to the initial attack. The structure was protected by energy shields and automated defenses, but those systems were designed to repel frontal assaults by primitive weapons. They weren't prepared for a shaped charge placed against the shield generator by someone who understood alien technology. The explosion that followed sent shockwaves through the entire camp. Emergency lighting activated as primary power systems failed, casting everything in eerie red illumination. Alarms wailed as the Vorthans realized their supposedly helpless prey had somehow acquired military-grade explosives. Commander Zethrak emerged from his command shuttle, roaring orders in his native language as he tried to restore order to the chaos engulfing his base camp. The veteran warrior's scarred armor gleamed in the emergency lighting as he surveyed the destruction with disbelief. In 3 decades of hunting expeditions, nothing like this had ever happened. That was when Morrison appeared directly in front of him. The confrontation between human and alien happened in the flickering light of burning equipment. Zethrak towered over Morrison by more than a foot, his 4 arms giving him significant reach advantage, and his ceremonial armor could deflect most human weapons. But Morrison had learned something important during his years of special operations. Size and technology meant nothing if you could get inside your opponent's decision loop. Zethrak's first attack was a classic Vorthan combat technique, using his energy spear to create a zone of lethal plasma while his secondary arms wielded traditional bladed weapons. It was a devastating combination that had killed thousands of enemies across dozens of worlds. But it depended on having space to maneuver and opponents who fought according to predictable patterns. Morrison did neither. Instead of retreating or attempting to match the alien's reach, he moved inside the spear's effective range and used the Vorthan's own momentum against him. The combat knife that had killed 6 young hunters earlier found the gap in Zethrak's armor just as precisely as it had with the others, the alien commanders. Death sent shockwaves through his remaining forces. Without his leadership, the young hunters abandoned their defensive positions and charged mindlessly toward Morrison's position, seeking to avenge their fallen commander. It was exactly what Morrison had hoped they would do. Captain Santos was waiting for them with Rodriguez's most powerful improvised explosive, a device that turned the fuel dump into a miniature sun for exactly 3 seconds. The explosion vaporized 4 Vorthans instantly and sent the survivors tumbling through the air like broken toys. When the smoke cleared, Morrison found himself standing in the ruins of what had been a Vorthan base camp, surrounded by the bodies of aliens who had thought humans were nothing more than clever prey animals. His small group of survivors had accomplished something unprecedented in the history of the Vorthan Empire. They had completely reversed a hunting expedition. Kim was already at the communications array, frantically working to establish contact with human forces. The equipment was partially damaged but still functional, and she managed to boost the signal enough to reach a patrol ship 3 systems away. Mayday. Mayday, this is civilian transport Lucky Strike, Santos broadcast over the emergency channel. We have been attacked by Vorthan forces at the following coordinates. Request immediate military assistance. The response came back within minutes. Lucky Strike, this is UEN Destroyer Retribution. We are en route to your position with a full battle group. Estimated arrival in 6 hours. Can you maintain your position until then? Morrison looked around at the burning remains of the alien base camp, then at his companions who had somehow survived an impossible situation through sheer determination and professional military tactics. Affirmative, Retribution. We'll be here. What Morrison didn't tell the rescue ship was that they wouldn't just be maintaining their position. Over the next 6 hours, his group systematically hunted down the remaining Vorthan survivors, using the aliens' own equipment against them with devastating effectiveness. By the time human warships arrived, there were no living witnesses left to report what had actually happened on Hunting Ground 7. The official report listed the incident as a failed piracy attempt that had been repelled by quick thinking from the civilian crew. The Vorthan Empire received a strongly worded diplomatic protest about attacks on civilian shipping, but nothing more. Human authorities had no desire to escalate tensions with a technologically superior enemy, but word spread through back channels and informal networks. Military personnel heard whispers about a Navy SEAL who had turned an alien hunting expedition into a masterclass on asymmetric warfare. Intelligence analysts studied the implications of humans successfully defeating Vorthan forces using improvised tactics and captured equipment, most importantly. The story reached other Vorthan hunting battalions, where it caused considerable debate about the wisdom of using humans as training prey. Several planned expeditions were quietly canceled as commanders reconsidered whether the potential benefits were worth the demonstrated risks. Morrison himself returned to active duty 6 months later, after the political complications from his previous mission had been resolved. He never spoke publicly about his experiences on Hunting Ground 7, but his service record showed a significant upgrade in his security clearance and assignment to a classified Special Operations Unit. Captain Santos received a commendation for exceptional leadership during a crisis situation, along with a substantial insurance settlement that allowed her to purchase a newer and better armed transport ship. She made sure the new vessel's security consultant was actually retired military this time. The Lucky Strike herself was repaired and returned to service, though Santos had it equipped with military-grade sensors and defensive systems. She never again accepted passengers without